Yes, welcome to the No State Project live from the Fortified Compound in Mesa, Arizona. Glad to be with you here. It is February. We don't do too many. I know there's all the jokes going around, but it's, not too many shows that get done on February 29th. But it is February 29th, 2020. Glad to be back with you live. Sorry that I had to miss the show on the Wednesday. And some say, well, why don't you just start it late? Well, because I have other obligations. And, those had to come first. So, but I got to spend a lot of time in traffic. And like I was mentioning, if you're familiar with the valley here at Phoenix area, you know that every major road is becoming like I-17. And when I first moved down here, I-17 has always been really horrific traffic. And it doesn't matter what time of day. It's northbound and southbound, all of I-17. It's always been that way. And there's always been bad traffic, but man, in the last 10, 15 years, so many people, especially the last 5 years, so many people are fleeing California and other so-called, states that, it's really, one of the I think it's the fastest growing area in the United States, something like 4 or 5 years running. So it did a lot of, it's a great place to live. Traffic really, it's still not Southern California bad. But sometimes, you feel that, I mean, my gosh, nothing westbound on 60, no, eastbound on 60 past Chrisman should be bumper to bumper, I mean, oy vey, I mean, you live out here, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But apparently, yeah, it's gotten pretty bad. So I thought, yeah, I'll just, I'll miss 60 by going down baseline. Nope. Bumper to bumper. Every exit there from west of Chrisman, or east of Chrisman, rather. Of course, the westbound is nothing. But anyway, thanks for everyone tuning in. I am not going to be giving out hey, howdy, Doug. I am not going to be giving out the caller number today because I can't take calls. So I apologize for that. But I do have a bunch of stuff prepped that we're going to go through. So if you do have any questions or concerns regarding the subject matter of what we're talking about here on the show, I want to keep it to that. And yes, let's talk about logical fallacies. But because I can't take calls, you can put it into the Skype chat, the Insta message me at Frank Rizzo 3. You can just, if you're watching here in the live broadcast there, and I appreciate that you do, then you can just put that into that there chat, and we can I'll address it then. But we're going to be talking about logical fallacies, but I have a couple of news items that I want to get to first, which I'm pretty certain will lead into a great discussion on logical fallacies, because we have to be able to recognize good arguments from the bad. And unfortunately, most people, especially politicians, and here's the thing, they probably know better. Some of them anyway. Some of them are very highly educated. They may be vile, they may be horrible people, but they got an education. They know the difference between a good argument and a bad argument. And so typically when you're talking with politicians, or my gosh, when they're being interviewed, I'll get more into this, but listen to an interview with a politician. And it doesn't matter whether you're on the fake news, you're on the Fox News. Well, it's kind of one and the same. It doesn't matter. Almost never do politicians directly answer a question. And it's very, very rare for a journalist or a talk show host to actually try to get them to answer that question. Now, someone like Mary Louise Kelly will at least make several attempts to get them to answer the question and point out that you haven't answered the question, but we'll get to that. I want to just say, if anybody wants to continue or wants to help support the show, it is much appreciated, much needed. It's markstevens.sells.com. That's SELZ. markstevens.sells.com and markstevens.net. And so I got a couple things. I want to thank Rob in Seattle for a couple of these news items that he sent me. This is quite something. Now, I am of the opinion based on experience, and it doesn't mean that this necessarily holds true for everything, of course. But if it ever comes out that a prosecutor is complaining that a police officer is dishonest or has falsified testimony and evidence, for that to actually be prosecuted or for that to actually be brought out in the public that the prosecution is doing this, holy crap, that's gonna be bad. How friggin' bad does it have to be when prosecutors are talking about how and that the prosecutors want to re-examine? We're not talking about Larry Krasner in Philadelphia, who campaigned and won to be the district attorney in Philadelphia, whose campaign was based on prosecutorial misconduct, and has since got something. I think 9 people have been exonerated because his office has gone through the files. Of course, we don't hear anything about a grand jury about indicting these former prosecutors, because something like 30 some prosecutors either resigned or were fired. So here we go to Houston. Texas. Prosecutors say they believe, again, when I go through this, keep in mind that prosecutors are coming out with this, not defense lawyers. Defense lawyers, nobody gives a damn, but they're not listening to them. Defense lawyers or non-lawyers like myself, we can shout from the rooftops. We can have tons and tons and tons of evidence of prosecutorial misconduct, tons of evidence of police misconduct. They don't give a damn. But here we've got a district attorney say they believe, DA, 69 convicted on possible false evidence by an ex-Texas cop. Prosecutors say they believe 69 additional individuals might have been convicted on what they allege to be false evidence from an ex-Houston police officer whose cases are being reviewed. And this is on ABC News by Juan Lozano of the AP. And there's a picture of the guy. So if you're on Skype, you already got this. But what I'm going to do is I will put this into that there chat, and you guys can see what I'm talking about over here. Yeah, split screen. Yeah, this is a one-man show. What I'd like to do is I'd like to get, this is for World War Wit. What I would like to do, and I'm working on trying to set the time aside. I should be able to do partial screen, or just while I'm doing this, I can go to instead of the webcam, I can go to a screen, so you can actually see. I can go to the actual article, and you can see in the video and follow along. But that I'm just not there yet to be able to do that and not disrupt the show or completely derail the show. So prosecutors announced Wednesday they believe 69 additional people might have been convicted on false evidence from a former Houston police officer. The announcement comes after judges earlier this month declared innocent 2 brothers who had been convicted based on testimony from former officer Gerald Goines, Goine. I'm going to say Goines. I know it's probably wrong, but okay. Goines' work with the Houston Police Department's narcotics unit. You see right there, you can see that there's a big problem. It's come under scrutiny following the January 2019 drug raid in which Dennis Tuttle, 59, and Regina Nicholas, 58, were killed. Prosecutors allege Goines, 55, lied to obtain the warrant to search the couple's home by claiming that a confidential informant had bought heroin there. Goines later said there was no informant. Wow. A police officer telling the truth. Wow, I'm just used to Testa lying. It's one of the few things, I agree with that. Alan, it was only a massage Dershowitz, that it's not illegal and not impeachable, whatever the impeached president does, as long as he believes it's in the best interest of the country. Do whatever you want. But he did mention decades ago about Testa lying. I think he's absolutely right about that. So I'm really surprised here that a police officer actually admitted that there was no informant and that he had bought the drugs himself. This is what the prosecutors are alleging. 5 officers, including Goines, were injured in the raid. We need to clear people convicted solely on the word of a police officer whom we can no longer trust, the Harris County District Attorney Kim Ogg. Can you really trust a cop, especially in a drug possession, in a code violation? Can you really trust the word of a cop? Yeah, I know. Republicans, your heads are probably going to explode. Oh my gosh, he's the hometown hero, the police officer. You got to give deference. Really? How many of these things do we got to read? How many times does it have to come out about how institutionally dishonest these police officers are? Because they're not accountable. Violent domination, no accountability. Yeah. How's that going to work out? Wow. Well, Nicole DeBoard, Goins' attorney, said the announcement by Ogg's office was a way to, quote, poison, end quote, potential juries in Goins' case and for Ogg to promote herself ahead of a hotly contested Democratic primary on Tuesday for her office. Yeah, I could see them wanting to do things for political purposes, but to actually say that her office and that 69 people may have been falsely convicted by her office? Ooh, yeah. But because these unfounded and unsupported allegations conveniently align with her very public use of the case in her campaign and offer an end run around the rules prohibiting her from discussing the facts of the pending case, she issues press release after press release in the latest in her last push before Super Tuesday. The board said that's of course the former cop who's accused of falsifying and has admitted to lying to get a warrant. That's what his attorney's saying. Wow. Prosecutors on Wednesday filed motions asking for judges to appoint attorneys for the 69 individuals so that their cases can be reviewed to see if their convictions should be overturned. Hey, how about this? Why don't you let someone who's not in the government review those cases? Why don't you have the ACLU review those cases? How about that? Most of the 69 cases are related to drug charges. Oh, yeah. In which individuals received sentences ranging from a few months in the county jail to 4 years in prison. And if anyone had guns, they were probably doing significant time, decades. Goins was the only witness to the drug offense in all these cases, the prosecutors said. None of these 69 individuals are still imprisoned. Well, hey, congratulate that you get an attaboy for that. That while they're reviewing the cases, I'm assuming that they haven't done all the time yet. Let's assume that some of them will let go because of this. That's good. None of these people are in prison anymore. I would hope that this Goins guy is sitting in prison in general pop. No, you don't put him in general pop until after he's convicted. I caught it. I caught it myself. So this is pretty good. Ogg said Wednesday. Well, so since the raid, prosecutors have been reviewing thousands of cases handled by the Houston Police Department's Narcotics Division. Goins and another ex-officer, Stephen Bryant. Two first names. Ogg said Wednesday that defendants in cases from 2008 to 2019 in which Goins played a substantial role are entitled to a presumption that he provided false evidence to secure their convictions. I got to say, if you got the police officer admitting in one case he lied to get a warrant, and he's got all these other cases, I got to say it may be for politics, but it's affecting real people here. The fact this is a step in the right direction. I mean, it's got to have some merit, right? We got to give this some merit. That they are hopefully the courts, the former prosecutors that now have those stupid black robes on, hopefully they will accept the prosecution's argument or claim or urging that that they are entitled to a presumption that the police officers, she's saying Goins, that he did, Goins and Bryant, that's a nice presumption. I think that should be a presumption across the board. Just presume that the police officer is not telling the truth. Why? That wouldn't really hurt things because they have the prosecution still has to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. Make damn sure that you witness, especially when you're putting people in prison, or like Ken Anderson putting people in prison to die. Make sure your witnesses are competent and credible. That's your job. Whether you're a prosecutor or any kind of litigant, you have an obligation to make sure that the witnesses are competent and credible. So Goins is facing 2 counts of felony murder in state court for the deaths of Tuttle and Nicholas, and is facing 7 counts in federal court over allegedly providing false information in the raid. He's also facing state and federal charges in the death. Oh, Bryant is the 2 cops are facing. Wow, so that's kind of amazing. This is an amazing story in that you've got 2 police officers, one who admittedly lied for a warrant. And they're actually being held for felony murder in Texas. I don't know if Texas is as hardcore with their death penalty with cops. I don't know. Can someone maybe, hey, we should look into that. What's the kill rate for, well, you see, there's not going to be too many cops convicted of murder. What do they necessarily go for the death penalty? Just remember that horrible case where Rick Perry would not review or commute the sentence or take the death penalty off. The guy who was falsely convicted of killing his family in a fire, and they went and putting him to death. I wonder if they would be, if this cop is convicted, if they were to seek the death penalty for the murder. And again, for anyone who doesn't know, Texas, I think, has like a record in the United States for the number of death penalty executions. So I could be wrong on that. Because everything's bigger in Texas. But if I'm, someone can look at, I would think it would, I think I'm on solid ground here to say that Texas is definitely in the top 5 for the most number of executions. So good on. Hey, it's good to know that those 69 people are out. 69, nice. And hopefully they stay out. Hopefully this cop is given a fair trial, and they put on a solid case. He's convicted, and maybe he'll get what, he will mercifully be killed in the death chamber. Something he probably didn't. Mercy is not something he probably got. So someone's saying there's video proof of conspiracy to commit murder. Check out the YouTube videos on Dave Grossman, retired military, and he's a bag of cats crazy instead of hillbilly. No joke. I don't think that was directed necessarily at me, and I don't know. Let me see before we get into the next bit of news. No, we don't have anything there. So why don't we go to this is something that's very it's been a problem for a long time. So we're going to go from Texas to Michigan. And again, this is from Rob in Seattle. I appreciate you sending that, and appreciate the support of the show. I wrote about the Supreme Court case in Adventures in Legal Land, Bennis versus Michigan, where it was decided that under the forfeiture rules, that being innocent was not a defense to having your car, your property forfeited. So the argument is that they do the forfeiture of property involved in the commission of a crime. So it's supposed to add to the punishment and to presumably make it more difficult to commit more crimes and be a deterrent. But what happened in Bennis versus Michigan, if I remember this, because I did not review this part before doing the show, but I've spoken about this, a lot. But in Bennis versus Michigan, the husband took the family car and engaged in the services of a prostitute there. And I don't know if they were caught in the act, or maybe they were caught in the act. They were arrested. And it was not a very good car. It was worth, maybe a couple $1,000s. Although, all right. So what happened was the wife, they wanted to forfeit the car to pay for the cost of prosecution. And the wife had filed to stop that because she owned the car. It was her car, or at least she had a 50% interest in that. And the courts I think the first two courts rejected it, and the Michigan Supreme Court reversed it in her favor, and then the state appealed to the Supreme Court of the United States, and they brought the hammer down. And probably a Republican, I'd have to look it up, most likely Republican judge that would do that, always siding with the power of the state and the police. So she argued she was innocent, and because she was innocent, she shouldn't be punished. The Supreme Court said, and no. They said that the being innocent is no defense if the property, whether you gave it to them to use it, whether you consented or whether you didn't consent, innocent owner is not a defense. So like they're saying here in this article, let me put the article in the chat so you guys got a copy of this too. Someone saying, no, Mark, I'm letting everyone know about Grossman and the crime committed to use against him. We'll put a link in the chat, and I'd like to see what you're talking about there. So where am I? All right. Michigan, is it Wayne County? Yeah, Wayne County. Like, they don't have enough problems in Detroit, right? So it says a 1996 decision by the Michigan Supreme Court, and this is reported by Tim Cushing at techdirt.com. The Bennis versus Michigan, a 1996 decision by the Michigan Supreme Court, set the precedent for the widespread abuse of civil asset forfeiture in the state. The ruling said being an innocent owner of property seized is no defense, and any forfeiture predicated on the illegal acts of others could result in the actual owner being deprived of property without violating their constitutional rights. Due process and Fourth Amendment be secure in your person and property. The state's law enforcement agencies took this ruling and ran with it to ensure minimum legal hassles. Cops are fighting crime, they're putting fighting in quotes, by taking small amounts of cash and 20-year-old vehicles from people they imagine might have committed a crime, were thinking about committing a crime, or happened to wander into an area where crime exists. The city of Detroit and Wayne County prosecutors are the busiest in the state's busy kleptomaniacs. And in an ongoing crackdown, Wayne County has seized more than 2,600 vehicles and collected more than $1.2 million in revenue from civil asset forfeiture over the past 2 years. And that is not general county or city budget money. The agency that steals the money, that does the forfeiture, keeps the money. It's part of their budget. Pretty nice perverse incentive. It's like jails, where the private prisons, where they charge more if there's empty beds. Yeah, nice. So when you break this down a bit, when you look at the unbelievable absurdity of this, if I was to, let's say, if I was to sell 10 kilos of cocaine to somebody inside Walmart, that property was used in the commission of a felony. It may not, Walmart, they didn't agree to it, or it could be a mom and pop store. It could just be, a small family owned store. Now, I just happen to commit a felony unbeknownst to them inside their building. Well, and I think this was pointed out in the dissent in Bennis versus Michigan, that under these rules, they could forfeit and steal the store, the building, and that, that's on that property. Just like if you were to be trafficking in cocaine and you were to get on a commercial flight. I think that was maybe what the dissent brought up in Bennis versus Michigan, and that's Bennis. So that's and that's not taking an overly broad view of it. They're saying that any property used in the commission of a crime, a violation of the statute, whether there's a victim or not, that the property used in the commission of that felony is forfeited. It could be forfeited to the government types. Wow. Says here, a proposed class action has been filed challenging the city's forfeiture program, which deprives the owners of their property due to other people's actions. The lawsuit, filed with the assistance of the Institute for Justice, tells us two of these 2,600 stories. Both involve vehicle owners losing their cars because of someone else's alleged criminal acts, even when no criminal charges were ever filed. So imagine in Venice if the guy had had relations with a prostitute in a cab. Would they forfeit the cab? It depends on who's doing it, right? I guess it's up to, they have discretion. Oh, look at me. I have discretion to steal. The first involves a woman who had to file for bankruptcy and now takes the bus because the city decided to take her car from her. Melissa Ingram, a plaintiff in a lawsuit, knows the many abuses of Detroit's system firsthand. Last summer, her car was seized by Wayne County Sheriff's deputies after she lent it to her then boyfriend so he could drive to a friend's barbecue. Later that day, police pulled him over for slowing down in an area known for prostitution. Although he was never charged with a crime, police nonetheless seized Melissa's 2017 Ford Fusion. Ingram paid $1,300 to get her car back, but 6 months later, she again loaned the vehicle to her boyfriend while she attended a barbecue. What's with the barbecue? As he was pulling away from the house, the same Wayne County deputies pulled him over and seized the car again, claiming the house he was leaving was supposedly connected to drugs or prostitution. You go to a city council meeting and you leave, that's known for a whole lot of crimes. Racketeering being the main one. Oy. Just like the previous incident, the car was seized immediately. No criminal charges were filed. Ingram could not afford the $1,800 the police said she had to pay to release her car. And if there is a note on that car, you got to keep paying it, or now your credit is destroyed. So really good there, Detroit. Wow. Similar thing happened to another plaintiff, only this time cops yanked his car right out from underneath him. It says in 2019, a man with whom Robert sometimes works asked him to visit a job site where he was cleaning rubbish. The man had a skid steer loader at the site and wanted to know if Robert knew how to operate it. Robert demonstrated how to use the equipment, and the two men planned to meet the next day to begin their work. Robert then drove to a nearby gas station and went inside to purchase a bottle of water. As he was leaving, officers surrounded him and demanded to know what he knew about a skid steer that was allegedly stolen from Home Depot. Robert knew nothing other than that the other man had rental paperwork from Home Depot, which was consistent with Robert's understanding that the equipment had been rented. After several hours of detention in the back of a police car, Robert was let go without being arrested. He has not been charged with anything. Police seized Robert's Camaro on the spot, along with 2 cell phones and $2,200 in cash he had in his pocket. Wow. This is just... that is just horrific. I mean, people want to complain about cops in Mesa, and I'm like, I was accused of being a domestic terrorist and a threat to the officers at a police station because I had a camera. I had a camera. Yeah. But Michigan, Detroit, oy vey, my gosh. I mean, these guys, it's a feeding frenzy up there. I have to make a note. Never go to Detroit. That is horrible. I love all these people. Not all these people, but you got like the police department. You got people who don't like the work that I do. That maybe they got a problem with anarchy, or they just have a problem with logic. They have a problem with anyone challenging what they believe is true. And they really seem to have a problem with someone like me who demands that claims be proven. If you say this, that A equals B, prove it. You're a sovereign citizen. Yeah, the no state, no citizen guy is a sovereign citizen, yet idiots. Mental midgets. But that's that kind of dovetails into talking about logical fallacies, baby. So I love the ones, and I've actually photoshopped a few of my own because they weren't available. The football ref. The football ref calling the logical fallacies. I think that is just excellent. And so there's one, and I've made one of these myself because I didn't see this one before. That and we have an illegal goalpost move. Defense demanded more proof after the offense successfully proved their point, and that's something that I get. Oh man, constantly. That is a constant thing. You somebody, and I've done other shows, and I've had people call the show, and they ask me questions, and I make my point, and it's never enough. Well, what about? So one of the things, if you're going to be engaging people in any kind of discussion on politics or government, or Republican, Democrat, or anarchist, and we need to recognize a bad argument. And the flip side is, of course, we need to know how to properly argue. And I don't think that it's necessarily a good argument to just constantly accuse people of straw man. Straw man, straw man, straw man, that's straw man. That's straw man. I didn't say it. It's straw man. Now, I know I use that because it's fairly common for the work that I do. So I want to go through some of the other logical fallacies. So I guess we can start with straw man. And a straw man is where you either make up an argument you think someone is making so that you can defeat it and show, well, that's not true because of X, Y, Z. Also, a straw man argument and fallacious argument, that also includes where you deliberately pull things out or change the content of the argument, making it easier for you to defeat. And you're going to get this with the IRS, and you're going to get this with lawyers, and you in and out of court. And so the one that I'm hit with all the time, because it makes it easier to paint me as something I'm not. But again, it's extremely dishonest. But hey, those who advocate for government and think that government is a legitimate organization, not the most honest people on the planet. So what they do is they deliberately leave out some of the most important parts of my argument. And they'll say, well, you're arguing the laws don't apply. No. The argument is there's no evidence. See, there's a big difference between just proclaiming the evidence, the laws don't apply, as opposed to your claim that they do, that you don't have any evidence to support your claim that they do. See, they're not the same argument. They're not the same claim. One of them just completely rips out the context. It completely rips out the why it's so effective. It takes out all the context. Instead, you're left with just someone yelling or proclaiming the laws don't apply. Now, if they actually address the issue, the actual argument, instead of straw manning it, and some do, not all of them. Not everyone is straw manning the argument. Some of them actually, they address it. So when they do address it, they don't defeat the argument. They don't show that the facts are wrong. They don't show that the logic is wrong. All they do is have a counterclaim, not a counter argument. I would say it's not a counter argument, but they try to counter it by saying we don't have to prove that, or that they don't have to prove that. So that's why they straw man it. Because people who use their reason, they use their brain, understand very clearly that the burden of proof is on the one who makes the accusation. So if you're going to say the Constitution, which is this so-called supreme law of the land, applies to everyone in all the property in this particular physical geographic area, you bear the burden of proving that, not me. And when you or I, when we ask somebody regarding this fallacious claim, if they claim, well, we don't have to prove that. I don't have to prove it. Logic dictates, common sense and decency, good faith, that you are lying. You know you can't support your claim, and you're just going to keep spouting it anyway. And that's why a sovereign citizen, or he's a freeman on the land. No. Address the actual issue that I'm raising. Your claim that the Constitution applies because I'm physically in Arizona, has no factual support. In fact, is counter to the actual facts. So they straw man it. Because anybody with any shred of decency whatsoever listening to someone say, I don't have to prove that. Okay. Now, Ricky, you don't have to give out the passcode and everything. I'm not taking calls on the show today. I can't. Maybe by the Wednesday show, we'll be able to do that. If someone has a question or comment for me regarding the subject matter of the show, then I can take that through Skype. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not taking calls today. I'm not going to bring anybody up. If you have a question or comment on logical fallacies or the two cases that I read from Michigan and Houston, I'm happy to address that, but I'm only going to address logical fallacies in those two cases today. I want to be able to have the show be focused. And honestly, I'm real tired of talking about the same damn thing every single show. So please give me some leeway on that. So remember that when you are having a conversation with somebody regarding these issues, because one of the things that lawyers do and bureaucrats, the dishonest do, that when you're having a conversation and when you're having a debate, most of the time, the average person doesn't give a damn about trying to have a better understanding of why you believe the way you do and why they believe the way that they do. They just believe that they believe it. I was raised this way. Damn it. I was born in India. I'm a Hindu, and Hindu is right. And they're not interested in a open discussion to have a broader understanding of the issues. They're not. So you have to be able to recognize when they are going off the rails and they're not addressing your argument. So the straw man is a big one. So keep that in mind. Not everything is a straw man, no. I know there's a self-proclaimed anarchist where everything is a straw man. I mean, it's ridiculous. And it just what it shows is that if we're trying, look, we have to know what they are. And so if you're going to call someone out on a fallacious argument, well, first, don't be a douche about it. Remember, the idea is to have the discussion is to broaden our understanding of the issues, to learn something. And two, get the actual logical fallacy right. So right here from Wiki, and of course, this is all pretty basic stuff. A fallacy is the use of invalid or otherwise faulty reasoning or wrong moves in the construction of an argument. A fallacious argument may appear deceptive by appearing to be better than it really is. Some fallacies are committed intentionally to manipulate or persuade by deception, while others are committed unintentionally due to carelessness or ignorance. The soundness of legal arguments depends on the context in which the arguments are made. Fallacies are commonly divided into formal and informal. A formal fallacy can be expressed neatly in a standard system of logic, such as propositional logic, while an informal fallacy originates in an error in reasoning other than an improper logical form. Arguments containing informal fallacies may be formally valid, but still fallacious. So obviously you go back to the Greeks and Aristotle. I mean, Plato, and one of my favorites, Socrates. Man, this guy could bring out some logical fallacies in people's thinking. See, diverting, let's say, an intentional fallacy. Sometimes a speaker or writer uses a fallacy intentionally in any context, including academic debate, a conversation among friends, political discourse, advertising, or for comedic purposes. The arguer may use fallacious reasoning to try to persuade the listener or reader by means other than offering relevant evidence that the conclusion is true. Examples of this include the speaker or writer diverting the argument to an unrelated issue, such as with a red herring, insulting someone's character. Assume the conclusion of an argument, a kind of circular reasoning, also called begging the question, making jumps in logic, which of course is a non sequitur. An example of a non sequitur is, if you are physically in Arizona, then the constitutional laws apply. That's a very common one. And how do they support that? They either repeat it, which is fallacy where the proof by declaration. I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say it, and I'm going to keep saying it. But it's a non sequitur. I've even had a harsh critic here on the show when we're talking about prima facie evidence, asking directly if my physical presence here in Arizona is somehow proves in any way that the Constitution, a written instrument from 1910, applies to me and creates obligations. And he had to admit it doesn't, because it doesn't. Non sequitur. This is why, again, Scott Bales, Chief Justice of the Arizona Supreme Court, this is an example of a non sequitur, because we prosecute and put other people in prison. How that relates to me, I have no idea. Non sequitur. It's a jump. The two are not meaningfully related. And that is why, for those who just love people like that, it's the Supreme Court. Supreme Court. Supreme Court. That's why Scott Bales, when I asked him to explain exactly how prosecuting other people and putting them in prison proves the Constitution, a written instrument, applies to me. And he laughed and just, waved me off. That is an example of a non sequitur. They don't relate. Too big a jump in the logic. Home Bumming It saying, I got a logical fallacy for you. My motion to dismiss for denial of rudimentary denial of due process because it was premature. I don't know if that's necessarily a logical fallacy, but it's certainly a fallacious argument. But when we get to court, that's what they do. They will say you are guilty the moment the ticket is filed. They're just going to have to now figure out what they need to say, depending on your defense, what they need to say and do to get to that predetermined judgment. That's why judges will turn around and say, well, they don't have to prove that. Wow. Imagine that. I'm the one with the baseless argument, and yet they're the ones that are arguing in the face of it. They don't have to prove XYZ. Yeah. Oh, I love this logical fallacy, the argumentum ad populum. Just because so many people agree, it must be true because everyone or the majority believes it. See, the majority of people believe that if you're physically in Arizona, the laws apply. They think that because a judge agrees with that, well, you're physically here, the laws must apply, and think that that's the end of the discussion. That's similar to your appeal to authority. Well, the judge said so. Oh. Oh, wow. How do you respond to that? Well, I guess you're right. Well, a judge in the tax court said Mr. Gitlitz was dead wrong. Judge at the Court of Appeals agreed with him, said dead wrong. And then judges at the Supreme Court said, oh, he was right the whole time. So just because a judge says it doesn't mean it's true. Some may, but the asserting that everyone agrees, this is what I believe is used more as a form of gaslighting, where they try to get you to think that, oh, because you are saying something that the herd doesn't agree with, allegedly doesn't agree with, because we don't know. We don't know exactly, because we know that people will say things that they know are wrong because they think the crowd believes it. And in the Ash conformity test is just one example, the proof that people will knowingly give false answers publicly because they think the herd or the tribe believes that same way. So no one in the tribe may actually believe that, but if they perceive that the herd does, well, the laws apply because you're physically here. Yep, that's what they all say. But in private, different story. So we know through the Ash conformity test, and it's been replicated, we know when you're asked to make a choice about something, a determination, if it's not public, you make the right choice. But you think that the tribe is thinking different. So we know why, we can explain why people say and do certain things. That explains exactly why, or one of the reasons why whistleblowers are treated so badly. Because they think, well, the tribe doesn't, you're attacking the tribe, but we can't do that. We don't feel, the tribe doesn't think the same way. So you got the tribe mentality that has people say things that are wrong. I read something the other day from the U.S. Supreme Court where it had to do with a privacy issue, the Fourth Amendment, and the exclusion rule. And the California Supreme Court, according to this U.S. Supreme Court, I didn't read the California Supreme Court. I only read the U.S. Supreme Court reporting about what the California Supreme Court had ruled. And the California Supreme Court had acknowledged that the police officer lacked probable cause. Okay. Should be an open shut. You got to exclude the evidence, right? Dismiss, or at least exclude the evidence. No. While admitting it was not a valid arrest with probable cause, they let it go anyway. We'll let it go. I guess in the grand scheme of things, it paved the way for the Supreme Court of the U.S. to settle the issue. Let's not go against the tribe. Let's not go against what we think everyone believes. Instead of using our brain, not giving a damn about the opinions of others, we're going to do what's right. We're going to say what's right. We're going to argue what's right, what's based on the facts, what's based on the evidence, what is based on logic, and we're able to do that with a valid, logically sound argument. It doesn't matter what the tribe thinks. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter. Unfortunately, it does. And that's something we have working against us hardcore. You can imagine people, if we're in court or you're at a city council meeting, and you ask them certain questions. And I'm still hoping that somebody out there or others are going to do this and show these people for what they are, just by asking questions. Because the majority of people that see you do that and absolutely, utterly embarrass those city councilmen because they will, and women, and because they will not be able to produce one single shred of evidence to prove that their rules, code laws apply to anybody. The vast majority are going to think you're out of your mind because they are not going to go against the tribe, even if the city council can produce any evidence to support it. Even when the city council, someone, snaps at you, we have jurisdiction because we said so, and it's up to you to prove otherwise, okay? There's going to be people that are going to see the video, and there may be 1 or 2 people out of 100 that will talk to you about this outside the tribe. And they say, hey, tell me more about this. It's the first I've ever seen or heard anything like this. And you can be exposing them for the criminals that they are. If I was to act in the same manner as you, and I was to force strangers in my community to give me money under threat, I forced them under threat to give me money, would you consider me a criminal? Man, that tears down the whole facade. Tears the whole damn facade down that they're a legitimate organization. The vast majority of people are not going to go. Internally, they may feel, oh, I always thought that. I never seen anybody actually confront these crooks on this. I never seen anyone actually. He's got the goods on these people because they use force to get the community to support them. They got jails. They got a prison system. Will they say that publicly? Science, the evidence says no. The overwhelming majority of people will continue parroting bad arguments and fallacious claims because they think the tribe agrees. So they're going to keep doing it. And that's why we get the occasional crap here on my YouTube channel. They're not going to go against the grain. Some it's going to be because their job depends on it. And you can't think that someone's going to put their career or they're going to put their family's security at risk just so that they can point out that what we call government is just men and women forcing the community to give the money, that they're just a criminal organization. But you got to go by their rules. They're the ruling class. If you got to kill them, you got to vote them out if you want any social change. Yes, somebody is mentioning Plato's cave. Very uncomfortable when you step out into the light. Your eyes aren't used to it. They did that in the Matrix. Why do my eyes hurt so much? Because you've never used them. And it's really uncomfortable to stand up. I know. I stood up in front and I'm willing to stand up in front of a law school of lawyers, a whole auditorium filled with lawyers. That was maybe 30% filled. Still well over 100 lawyers. The ASU Law School and confront Scott Bales. Because the facts are what matter. The facts. I could have been proven wrong right there in front of an entire room full of lawyers. I could have been proven wrong. I wasn't. He couldn't present the damn evidence. All he had was a non sequitur. That's all he had. But it's uncomfortable to stand apart from the tribe. And that, most people won't do that. And it's really unfortunate because it's a lot of things you would like to think that we would not be in the situation we were in if more people could take a stand. But maybe we'll get some people who watch the show and today, and I'll go. I can go to a city council. I can ask a couple of questions like that. And if you're able to do that, please post a video. Send me a link. I'd love to see that. Mine are online, of course, at markstevens.net and on my YouTube channel. They go back a few years because I've not been able to get back there to do that. And no, I won't ever do that in Mesa. I learned my lesson. I learned my lesson, but I did in Tempe. I did it in Scottsdale. Tempe they're the ones that answered. So some of them, they don't answer you. And to me, unless you're prepping for court, I would look for a place like Tempe where they actually do answer your questions. But I'm going to get into more logical fallacies through the next few shows and focus at least part of the show on how to construct a valid argument and how to spot a bad one. Because when you start discussing politics, you will hear some bad arguments. Another one is I don't know if we could call this a straw man, but it's a very common thing, at least in the United States, and with Republican types, so-called conservatives, to equivocate, to use the word communism to mean many, many things. And one of the big ones is that Bernie Sanders, for example, is a communist, not a democratic socialist. And so when I see that on Facebook, what I do is look, send me the link of Bernie Sanders advocating the abolition of the United States government once the United States government has used revolutionary violence or violence to take over the means of production of everything of every company in the United States. And that once they have control of all the companies, they have ownership of all, and there's common ownership of all the companies in the United States, government's just going to be abolished. Send me the link. I had people that insist that China is communist and has been since 1946. I might be a year or two off on the year. China is communist. Again, if you go to what communism literally is, just the Communist Manifesto is not that long. Communism is governmentless. It's stateless. There is no government. That's the goal of communism. So 70 years, are there any plans to abolish the government? So what they're doing is they're using a logical fallacy by equating communism with Chinese authoritarian and totalitarianism. Not the same thing. So spare me this thing that I'm advocating communism. I'm just trying to explain a logical fallacy. So unless somebody can show where Bernie Sanders is advocating the total social ownership of the means of production and then abolishing the government, I like to see it. Until then, he's not a communist. At least he's not one who's preaching it. So anyway, without calls, is it a show? Yeah, of course it's a show. We covered some damn good ground here today. We've got 69 people out of jail and prison. That police officer who admitted to lying to get a warrant, they're out of jail. And they may have their convictions overturned. And others, they're reviewing thousands of cases with this dishonest cop. It's a little redundant to say dishonest cop. And also talked about the Bennis versus Michigan again, and the horrific stealing of property in Michigan, Detroit and Wayne County, Michigan. So yeah, but we'll see. Hopefully we get things straightened out. We'll take calls on Wednesday, but calls are going to be limited to the topic of the show. So please keep that in mind. All right. My name is Marc Stevens. I'm glad to be able to meet with everyone today and discuss these issues. We're going to continue talking about logical fallacies and how to frame a good argument and how to spot a bad argument, because they are all over the damn place. And if you're defending against an attack, you certainly need to be able to recognize a bad argument, because boy, you're going to hear them and see them in space. I mean, they're going to, it's a fire hose from politicians and bureaucrats of logical fallacies. Got to expect that. So, but I will be back live on Wednesday. And so, hey, till then, salud a tutti.